All right, so let's get started because everybody has places to be. Thanks for joining us today for our February session, Title II Tuesday session. We are going to be focusing on one of the plethora of non-regulatory guidance documents that has come out recently, but the real focus is actually going to be hearing from some of our district partners on the work that they're doing, aligned to some of those strategies that we're going to be talking about today. So we'll spend a little bit of time this morning talking about the hierarchy of rules. There are lots of rules, and sort of knowing the order in which to pay attention can be helpful. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll do a brief overview of the guidance document on recruitment, retention, and professional learning. But again, as I said, the majority of the time will be spent hearing from our district colleagues on the work that they're doing in those focus areas, and really looking forward to that part of today's session. So yes, there are rules for spending federal funds. There are requirements that have to be followed. And if you were at our office hours on Tuesday last week, where we talked about another one of the guidance documents, you might know the answer to this question, but just have five different items here, places where information can be shared about requirements, things that can be considered required, and wondering who's in charge, like what's the hierarchy? What order should these be in? Sort of from most authoritative to least. So just curious if anybody wants to either come off mute or put in the chat what they think the right order would be, or at least what would be the most authoritative of the items listed here. Amy, yes, there are rules. Anybody have want to be brave and say which one they think is the most authoritative? I know my ODE colleagues know the answer to this question. Okay, well, we have a nice little graphic on the next slide that will tell you what you need to know in case you don't already. So we've got here the five different items, and statute is definitely the most authoritative. That's what takes precedence over all the others. Federal law typically is trumps state law, and there are cases in which the law might say that there's some flexibility in that regard, but typically the statute is the most restrictive or the most authoritative of all of these. Then the next would be regulations, which for our purposes, the intention of regulations is really to fill in the practical details about implementing the law. I think of these sometimes as like similarly to our ORSs in Oregon being the statute or the law, and our OARs being the kind of the descriptive piece of that. So for federal programs, we're talking about EDGAR, the Education Department General Administrative Regulations. I think that's right. And then UGG, which we Uniform Grant Guidance. Those are the two that are typically what we're talking about. Those also have the full force of law, as do statutes. And then we get into the other three: non-regulatory guidance, which we'll be talking a little bit more about today, and then dear colleague letters, which are typically sent to groups of individuals like Title I directors or special education directors. And then the lowest rung on that ladder would be communication from individuals at the Department of Education. We reach out to our program officers and ask questions, and they email us back. So that's sort of at the bottom end of this hierarchy. But we've found that this graphic can be helpful when you're trying to figure out where should I go to determine what's really required. Any questions about that? It feels pretty self-explanatory, but federal programs are complicated. So non-regulatory guidance, which is what we're going to talk about today, really is where Ed is trying to provide some clarity and detail and interpretation around the statute, because we all know how user-friendly the language in the statute can be. Uh, they are updated more regularly than the statute. Um, ESSA, as you know, there was about a 14, 15-year gap in reauthorization, or maybe it was closer to, yeah, 14 or 15-year gap between NCLB and ESSA. So non-regulatory guidance is usually updated more frequently than that. And there have been three new non-regulatory guidance documents for Title IIA that have come out in the last couple of months, which is why we're just sharing with you, letting you know it's available, and kind of giving you a high-level overview of what's included. So today we'll be talking about this document with its very succinct title. um, it was released in December, and it replaces the non-regulatory guidance document that we had posted on our Title IIA guidance webpage that came out in 2016. So it's been close to 10 years since a document of this type has been provided. And its focus is really best practices. If you were at our office hours last week, you know that we talked about the allowability guidance that came out, which was it's been about 20 years since that's been updated. So that tells you something. But this document is really best practices focused, and it talks about how to use Title IIA funds in collaboration with other federal funds, what we typically call braiding, using multiple funding streams to support a particular strategy or initiative. And it does emphasize that with using Title IIA funds, you really want to think about, what are your identified needs, and that Title IIA funds are supplementary to what districts are required to provide, or what they have provided with state and local funds previously. And lastly, just kind of a reminder that Title IIA funds can be used in all buildings, absolutely. They can support all teachers. They don't have restrictions that are in place for Title I in that regard. And uh, one of the primary purposes of Title IIA is to provide equity of access for students. So it is important to keep in mind that a key purpose is to support educators in schools where there are high percentages of students navigating poverty, where we see larger numbers of out of field or inexperienced teachers in the classrooms, and in schools where students are not meeting state academic standards. Okay. The guidance document is long. I'm sure you don't have time for a little light reading. So sort of captured on this slide, the 5 big areas that this particular guidance document focuses on. We'll be talking about the first 4 of these today. The 5th one, promoting educator diversity, there is in fact the 3rd of the trio of documents for Title IIA that was released recently, is focused exclusively on diversifying the educator workforce. And so right now the plan is to share in April some information from that guidance document, as well as hearing from some of our district colleagues on work that they're doing specifically around promoting educator diversity. So we'll talk more about that next time. For this session, we'll just be focusing on those top 4. And that's what we'll be hearing from our colleagues about as well. As the title would imply, compensation, right? This is an area where we see a lot of use of funds in Oregon, really using the funds to support the time, excuse me, and effort of educators who take on additional responsibilities, like mentorship roles, instructional coaching, that kind of thing, paying for their time outside of the contracted workday. You can see some examples listed there. Providing recruitment and retention bonuses to help stabilize or ensure the stability of our educator workforce. And then also in Oregon, we do see a fair number of districts using their funds to support additional certification for teachers, whether that's usually it's in areas of need. Well, always it's in areas of need identified by the district. Often we'll see ESOL endorsements as an area of focus or special education. So ways to use these funds to directly compensate educators for the work that they're doing is definitely a common and strategic use of Title II-A funds. There's also ways to use 2A funds to help bring educators into the profession outside of the traditional model of, enrolling in an educator prep program. That top and bottom one, the teacher residency and teacher apprenticeships, those are similar in that it's sort of a combination. Folks who use their funds for those purposes, it's a combination of working in a classroom with a licensed teacher while also taking coursework to become a licensed teacher. The residency programs are actually sort of described in law. So ESSA is pretty prescriptive about what the residency programs need to look like. The teacher apprenticeship programs actually offer additionally like pay to the individuals who are doing that work. Montana is doing some work at the state level around teacher apprenticeship programs. That sounds pretty exciting. Also for school leaders, apprentice or residency programs are also a way to use those Title II-A funds strategically. Then the Grow Your Own program, that's something that we're going to hear a little bit about today, as well as in April, is often done in collaboration to some degree with an institute of higher learning, right? So collaborating with a local university or college. And often it's used to help grow the workforce from within. So whether that's recruiting within your community or within the staff in your buildings, namely paraprofessionals, helping paraprofessionals get their teaching credential. That's a way to use these funds, not only that is in line with the intention of Title II-A of teacher leadership, but also diversifying the educator workforce, right? Helping districts bring educators into their district and buildings that reflect their student population, which we know is extremely beneficial for student outcomes. This doesn't need a lot of explanation, but I will say this is probably the majority of use of funds in Oregon fall into this category. We see lots of induction, coaching, and mentoring happening in Oregon districts, lots of uses of funds for professional learning. We've talked about that definition in ESSA that's required, that it be ongoing and sustained. And the guidance highlights three particular areas. These are not, obviously, there are many, many ways that you can use Title II-A funds for professional learning, but they are trying to amplify in this document some of the ideas that we've talked about previously, like elevating paraprofessionals to pursue their teacher certification, the idea of really bridging that transition from early childhood to the elementary school, allowing both early childhood educators, even those who are not district educators. So they can be partners, they can be organizations that the district partners with, but they don't have to be district employees necessarily. Bringing elementary educators and early childhood educators together to learn collaboratively to support that transition. And then similarly with multilingual and students who are experiencing disability, bringing general education and special education teachers together for that collaborative learning in service of supporting students. And then lastly, those teacher leadership opportunities, again, that you see crossover in things that we've already talked about, right? Mentoring, coaching, taking on a role of leading, developing and leading professional learning. Many educators want to still stay in the classroom, and they want the opportunity to also serve in leadership roles. And so again, Title II-A gives you the opportunity to use these funds in that way. So lots of ways that we can use Title II funds to support an array of opportunities for educators and aspiring educators. And what we're going to do now is hear from a few of our districts of what they're doing in this regard. So I'm really, really pleased and grateful to have four different districts represented here today, taking their time to share with us what they're doing so we can kind of learn from each other. So before I turn it over, I don't see any questions in the chat. Was there any questions about anything that I shared? I know I tried to keep the talking to a minimum. But are there any questions before we turn it over to our district partners? Okay. So we are going to start with Jefferson County, and Billy is going to talk to us about their teacher mentoring program.
All right. So I just put the little graphic here that we use on our teaching and learning support site. But we have teacher mentors or teachers that are mentored in their first and second year of teaching. We have currently three coaches at the district level. One supports ELD, and the other two support instruction throughout most of our mostly elementary supported, but they do work with secondary and the middle school as well. So within the first year in our district, we bring our teachers back, our new teachers, in a week before in service. And so they have 4 days of training within that week that is provided by the instructional coaches, both at district level and our building instructional coaches. Each of our buildings does have its own instructional coach. Um, and during that week, they work on familiarizing themselves with our unit plans that we've created, our assessments that go along with those. Um, Also, we do some behavior management, some classroom management skills, just training and anything that they're going to need support on throughout the year. We also take them on a tour of our school district because it's fairly large. We have the Warm Springs Reservation that is part of our school district. So taking that group of teachers out with our liaisons and our coaches to be able to see where our students are living, seeing how long some of them are on a bus, um, is really shocking and eye-opening for a lot of people because we have students who are on the bus for an hour and a half one way in the morning. So taking them on the tour, and then after that new teacher in-service week, they participate in all the in-service activities the following week. And then throughout the year, monthly, they are provided PD through with our instructional coaches, both in the building and at the district level. And that varies anything from student engagement to planning, new curriculum support, things like that. And their building coaches go along to those trainings with them. So even if those coaches aren't presenting that particular day, they will be supporting their group of new teachers as they're learning. Um, Along with that, they are provided weekly mentoring services. So our coaches are meeting weekly with our new teachers. Usually it's during their prep period. It can be a 30-minute period. I was the principal at one of the elementaries last year, and several of our new teachers asked if they could do it after school so that they had a larger chunk of time. So it's just at the minimum of once a week, but they can do much more. And that's when they come up with a coaching plan of what are the needs for that specific teacher, whether it's side-by-side modeling, whether it's just some coaching, whether it's planning support. Um, a lot of it last year with our new teachers revolved around our new reading program and what does small group instruction look like. So they support that. Um, they also will support our second year teachers. They get mentoring once a month. So if you're hired, you get it continually. Um, Also, during their PD and their monthly meetings, and training, they have the opportunity to get 4 graduate credits, which most of them still are needing. So it helps a lot moving them along the pay scale. Those second year teachers, this year they're doing a book study. Not every year do they do that, but they also meet with their mentor once a month at the minimum. There are some that are still meeting weekly with those coaches. Um, and some of that is with our district coaches. We have a couple of our elementary schools who had a higher turnover than others. So it's just impossible for one building coach to mentor 8 new teachers. So our instructional coaches at the district level step in to help them. And they also will mentor our new coaches. Each of our elementary schools this year has new instructional coach, either new to the position or new to school. Like our high school instructional coach moved to the middle school, and our middle school instructional coach moved to the high school. So our coaches at the district level are supporting them in that transition. They also will assist with the monthly professional development for teachers. Um, and just provide the ongoing support inside the school day to day. Our ELD coach works in there as well. We just started a dual language program 3 years ago at it was housed at the middle school, and now it's housed at 2 of the elementaries. So she's really been supporting them as they transition into new schools and kind of helping them with the support that they hadn't had when they were a standalone program. But what we're seeing is our turnover rate has went to, it was 76%, I think, teacher retention to 85% in the past 4 years. So we're seeing that teachers are feeling supported, and so they're more likely to stay because of that support that's in place for them.
Thanks, Billy. I really appreciate, one of the things that I appreciated about the conversation we had before this was um, the really intentional support over time that the district is providing to their educators, recognizing that when you're a first year teacher and a second year teacher, things look different, but it doesn't mean that because you've completed one year that you're good to go. So really appreciate that. And thanks so much for taking the time. Anybody have any questions for Billy about their teacher mentoring program? We've included contact information here so that you can reach out if you want to follow up with more, but always welcome to field questions as we go.
It looks like Jeff Johnson unmuted.
Okay, I think he's preparing for his.
Okay.
He's next. He knows he's next, so he wants to be ready. Okay, thank you, Billy, and
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. And again, her contact information is on here if you want to know more. And also want to name that for each of these districts, I believe this is true. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Title II-A funds are being braided with other funds to do this work. So they're not funding their entire mentoring program out of Title II-A. Just want to be transparent because we know it costs more money than you probably get with just your Title II-A funds. Okay, Jeffrey, let's hear about principal mentoring.
Absolutely. Good morning. Jeff Johnson, Director of Elementary Education for the Eugene School District, and here to talk a little bit about principal mentoring and the work that we're doing here in the Eugene School District. Really feel that the principal is the key instructional driver in the building. And so some of the work that we are doing is a combination of coursework, which is required over time, as well as mentoring, and then the development of a professional learning community with our principals. I think over time, it's interesting that you just discussed the amount of Title IIA funds being used for this. It has really continued to shrink. Right now, we use a definite combination of funding sources, and really what we're spending Title IIA money on is only for the mentoring time of a retired principal, along with several of our seasoned exemplary principals that do some of that support. The coursework that we have all of our principals engage in is over a 5 to 7 year period of time. So really looking at that long game of what we're asking principals to learn and be able to do. The mentoring piece, where they engage with a mentor, is really that first 2 years. They are here in our system. So I thought I'd dig in a little bit on the coursework that we do with our principals, and we're part of a consortium with Lane ESD, Springfield School District, and South Lane School District, working with research for better teaching and skillful teaching. And so you can see some of the courses that we have and the days that are required. And we work with principals to take on one of these each year, kind of after your first year. Typically, that first year of being a principal is kind of drinking from the fire hose, but then we are compensating folks for engaging in that coursework. That first big one that we like to have our principals engage in analyzing teaching for student results, where we're really digging into our instructional frameworks, looking at how we deliver observations and feedback, looking at classroom climate and culture, working with teachers on instructional planning and delivery, really working on professional collaboration and assessment and accountability. As we move into things like differentiated conferencing, it's really looking at that teacher level of knowledge and skill, and matching the kinds of conferencing that we're having them, going from being very directive to those that need that level of support, to being very collaborative with our more skilled educators. So there. We build in that level of work, and then in the next slide, where we really engage in that ongoing embedded professional learning, so to speak, is with our principal PLC. So at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, we engage in monthly learning walks with all the principals. Like for us at elementary, we are solely focused on our English language arts adoption and how we are delivering instruction in the classroom. And so monthly, as an elementary learning community, we get together with all of those principals. And then also separately, each month, each of those new principals also has a regular meeting with their supporting director. And then so on the opposing weeks, they also have meetings with those principal mentors. And really, we're looking at the combination of the director support and the mentor support, where the mentor support, you've got the opportunity to ask all those questions and get the supports on things that you really need and want, but you don't want to ask your supervisor those kinds of questions. My stance and theory is there's no such thing as a dumb question. It's only the questions that you don't ask and you make a bad decision about. So we engage in that ongoing weekly follow-up, either through mentor or director support with our principals as they come on board. And then as we have room, like some years, we've got 10 new principals, other years we've only got 2 or 3 new principals. in that coursework where we've budgeted, we start to line up all of our assistant principals and have them participate in that coursework when it's available, so that we're really looking at that principal pipeline of you're coming into the role of assistant principal, you're learning the role, and we want you to be ready in 3 to 5 years to be the principal of your own building. Is it working? Anecdotally, yes. I would say, we definitely have some data, especially working with our principals on being instructional leaders and our upbeat over the past few years. We are seeing a real increase in our staff perception of building-based professional development that happens. We have early release Wednesdays where that professional development happens, and the general consensus, I want to say it's like a 10 to 15 percentage point increase just in terms of perception of the quality of what happens at the building level. I feel that our retention is looking more solid, though this year we've had some real challenges. And so this year, maybe it doesn't quite look the same, but I think our retention rates are working and supporting our principals. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate your thorough description. And again, Jeff's contact information is on this slide if you have additional follow-up questions. Okay. Now we're going to hear from Corvallis School District. Jennifer is going to share with us about they're going deep in math. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Hello. All right. So I'm going to start with our why. We, following the return to school from the pandemic, fully detracked our math system for kindergarten through 7th grade for many, many reasons. But we heard loud and clear from our teachers that they needed more support in differentiating in those heterogeneous classrooms. Secondly, math literacy continues to be of increasing importance in the world. I'm just going to put a little plug in for Count It Out. I know there's been a couple of showings, and OSU and LBLESD have some showings coming up in March about the importance of mathematics and how it shows up in the world in very real ways for every single human being. We also have a need to increase teachers' confidence in their math instruction using principles of ambitious math teaching. And this varies from levels as to what that need looks like, but it exists across the board, K-12. And then I do not believe that Corvallis is alone in a need to increase student achievement on our math assessments. When I look across the state, there's definitely room for improvement for all of us to serve our students in mathematics. So then on the next slide, I have just some really from the top view, trying to keep it brief. When I talked to Sarah, I went in a lot more depth. So, but some of the big pieces that we have. So in K-5, we have grade level district-wide professional development. So that's when all of the 3rd grade teachers across the district come together and I run professional development. We're focusing on ambitious math teaching, differentiation, and deepening their knowledge of the math they're teaching, as well as kind of that vertical alignment. Where does this fit? What should kids be coming to understanding? What are you trying to build? And where does that become applied? In addition to that, we have what we are calling instructional rounds. So these are in grade bands, K2 and 3-5, and they're opt-in, but there is a focus on recruiting teachers who are either new to the grade level they're teaching or new to the profession. And so in these instructional rounds, we get subs for those teachers, and then we'll go into 2 or 3 more veteran teachers who are really implementing the aspects of the professional development we've been doing in the last few years and are masters of their craft. So the team will go in and observe a lesson and then come out and debrief it, um, have a little bit of information about what they're going to see in the next lesson, observe it, and come out and debrief it. And then we'll have some time to work together at the end of the day to generalize to their practice. So take an upcoming lesson and what's one or two key elements that you saw that you feel like you're right on the verge of putting in your own practice or want to add into there. And then there's also individual and or team coaching upon request. So there are some teachers that have reached out and said, like, this lesson for 3 years has just given me a headache. Will you come co-plan this with me? Or will you teach it so I can watch what it looks like when somebody else teaches it? Or some of our PLCs have said, we've got this unit coming up. We want you to come in and work through some of the models that are showing up in our curriculum because we want to understand them deeply. So those have been the big focuses at elementary. Middle school, we have, again, grade level professional development days, but we're following a studio model with those. So it's kind of like taking your professional development and your walkthroughs or instructional rounds and putting them together. Teachers development group uses the studio model as well. So we have some professional development in the morning. We look at a specific lesson that we're going to see. We go into that teacher's classroom and either they teach the lesson or I teach the lesson while the rest of the teachers are observing. Then we come out and debrief what we saw and look at how is this aligned to the professional learning we had in the morning? What aspects are you seeing? How did real students in our district react to these teaching moves and routines? And so that's what the studio model looks like. At the middle school, our coordinator has also really leveraged the leadership meetings. So I went and spent 2 hours training the leadership on this is what your math PD for your teachers looks like and where we're trying to go there. So the administrators have a similar view of where we are and where we're trying to go. And then we have rounds scheduled at each of the middle schools where all of the administrators come together and we watch multiple classrooms. I set it up in a way that there are teams. There's like 3 classrooms and 2 or 3 people on a team. You spend 15 minutes in each classroom, but you rotate through the classroom so that at the end, we can put all 3 of those together and understand what happened in the whole lesson. But before we do that, I press them to use some of our templates to come up with feedback for the part of the lesson that they saw. Because the reality is most administrators don't have time to sit through a full math lesson on any type of regular basis. So practicing that, I saw 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I know we're working on these things, and this is the feedback I can give to move that teacher from where they are a little bit forward. So that really solidifies the work that the teachers are doing and reinforces it. And then at the high school, we are doing a different model there. So this is a lesson study model where we take a lesson and the team of geometry teachers that's going to teach that lesson. We plan it together and then we'll go into the first person's classroom. They'll teach the lesson. We have some type of formative assessment at the end. We all look at that formative assessment and make tweaks to the lesson. Then we go into the next teacher's classroom and we do the same lesson with those tweaks and repeat that process. So this is what we've been working on. I will say at the high school, we're definitely moving at the speed of trust. So it's at elementary and middle school, it's required professional development, and or elementary and middle school, it's required, and at the high school, it's opt-in. So there are a few teams that we're working with right now in that focus. So in the classroom visits, we've been able to see elements of the professional development in classrooms where it hasn't been before, different pedagogy moves, questioning strategies. There are feedback surveys for the teachers after all of the professional development opportunities where they tell us how it was and what they're working on. And teachers in the last year and a half have become more vulnerable in what they're expressing, more honest with both themselves and myself and their administrators on what they're working on, how it's going. And then at the student level, we're looking at youth truth data, OSAS scores, 9th grade Algebra 1 completion, and 4 years of high school math. Although I will say the majority of those student measures are slower to change to measure the impact of what we're doing right now. that was a lot, but I will see if there are any questions now.
Thanks, Jen. One of the reasons that I asked Jen and to present what's happening in Corvallis is this sort of deep focus, right? In one area, we know there are many, many needs, but the differentiation across school buildings as to how the support is being provided is really an intriguing and important aspect. And I love that moving at the speed of trust with high school. You know, we often hear about strategies being used in elementary schools and they're quicker to adopt. And so recognizing that you will be able to make, go slow to go fast, right? Be able to make progress in the high schools, secondary schools, if you use kind of a different approach. So thanks so much for sharing. This is really great. And again, Jen's contact information is here if you want to follow up with her. All right, last but certainly not least, we have Central Point, and we had some sort of technical issues apparently with the PowerPoint. So we are going to adjust the PowerPoint after the presentation to add the information that Christine Beck is going to share. But these were the prompts that were on the slides when I sent them to folks, just to give them a starting place for what to share. So Christine is going to share with us now about their Grow Your Own program.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. And I'm a pretty techie person, so I'm sad to say I wasn't able to get those slides in, but we will. We, appreciate just people interested in hearing more about what we're doing. And I've just taken like a mass quantity of sticky note about the last 3 presenters. So thanks for doing that as well. Gives me lots of ideas. I spoke with Sarah and just kind of talking about some of the things that our district has done. We have a few unique programs within our district. So we are pretty spread out geographically, and we have EL students, of course, at all of our sites, but few numbers in especially our rural locations. So to have teachers that are ESOL endorsed has been one of our challenges as well in those out-of-town schools. In addition, we have a dual language two-way immersion program. It started when students were in kindergarten, and they are now juniors in the high school. So the program has been going for 12 years, and we're very excited about it. But to retain and keep our dual language Spanish TWI, so our two-way immersion teachers, has also been a challenge, as well as recruitment for the educational assistants that are bilingual in those classrooms. And then our district took back our site-based special education programs. And so we house those within our own district. They're called MAPS programs. And we have a K1, a 2, 3, a 4, 5. Then we have 3, 6 to 8 programs that are site-based for MAPS. And then, of course, at the high school. So all of those have presented us with challenges for staffing and to recruit. And we have really strong, great people that have been through our mentor programs and teachers or educational assistants. They've participated in all of our district PD over the years. And so we've invested a lot, and they've invested a lot to be part of our district as well. And so we've really focused on this Grow Your Own, really coming out of COVID and through COVID and some of the restrictions that were lifted during that time. So we have staff that have said, hey, I'm super interested in working as an ELD teacher, as well as doing, let's say, Title I at one of our out-of-town schools. Perhaps their FTE is a percentage of both. But they either have their reading endorsement for the Title I and they don't have their ESOL endorsement, or vice versa. And so we have been able to use our Title II funds to support our teachers in getting those certifications or those endorsement levels. We've mostly been using Grand Canyon University as our partner in supporting some of that work. Just because of their flexibility of the teacher being able to continue on the job and then do online learning as well. But we've also used Oregon State University's ESOL endorsement program as well too, that has been pretty successful for many of our teachers. And then, and of course, using our student teaching voucher discounts for some of our teachers through the state university system, braided with the Title II-A funds. So the key areas have been, as you can hear, the ESOL endorsement, reading endorsement for our Title I teaching staff, our teaching endorsement for our classified educational assistants that want to move into teaching in our two-way immersion program. So our bilingual classified that want to move into teaching as well. And then our advanced math. So we have some some teachers that have their basic math endorsement level or just a strong aptitude for math, and maybe they're currently teaching science or one of the other content areas, and they're willing to go and get their advanced math endorsement. We have used our Title II funds to help with that as well. The other piece that we use Title II on the Grow Your Own is we have a teacher choice. Teachers can apply for Title II funds for teacher choice PD, and that's for them to explore and see what other type of endorsement areas they might want to consider adding. But before they commit to a program, they can go and do some PD and see if that's a Grow Your Own that they might be interested more in as well. Evidence for that is that we have no unfilled positions. So that's a celebration, certainly for us, knock on wood, and we have been able to continue to fill all of our open positions in those challenging areas. And the second piece behind that is that we've had increased retention within those positions. Interestingly, and though we didn't realize it at the time, in the community, there's a lot of promotion within the community themselves to our parent group about becoming classified paraprofessionals in our TWI program, and that the idea that if they continue to pursue that and like it, there is an opportunity for them to use district funds in order to help them with their licensure if they want to move into a teaching degree for that. So those are some of the evidence key pieces that we have found. I'll be the person of contact for sure for these programs, and like Sarah said, we'll get these in a slide for you as well.
Questions for Christine? You did a beautiful job of answering the questions without actually having the slide up. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you condense all that into a slide or two. And if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, that would be great. So if anybody on this call wants to reach out to you, just love the multiple ways in which Central Point is using these funds to get at different aspects of stabilizing the educator workforce, right? So whether it's the endorsements or growing people up through the program, Central Point is not a huge district, and it's not tiny, and we know in every district retention is an issue. So really appreciate hearing about how you're using your Title II funds to do that. Okay, well, we are at the end of our time. There's a list of resources here, mostly documents that will take, or links that will take you to some of the documents that we've been talking about, places to get information about Edgar and UGG if you are so inclined, if you want to spend more time thinking about that hierarchy. Our Title II webpage does have our guidance webpage, I should say, does have all of the updated non-regulatory guidance documents. All three are on that webpage. So if you want to take a deeper look, please feel free. And just a reminder that we won't have a session in March. It will be spring break. Nobody wants to come and do anything but relax. And then in April, we intend to do another session similar to this one where we talk about diversifying the educator workforce and hear from a couple more of our district colleagues. So just really want to thank Billy and Jeff and Jen and Christine for coming today and sharing their time and expertise with all of you. And look forward to the next time that we are able to be together. If you have any questions in the interim, please feel free to reach out. And